Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. Thanks for joining me. I've got a really great guest to speak to today. Kind of leads on from a topic that I was discussing a couple of weeks ago, and it's all around the area of mindset and performance. And my guest today on the Business Stories podcast is John Lewis from JL Mindset Performance. Welcome along, John.
Thank you very much, Darren. What an absolute pleasure to hop on this with you. Yeah, very exciting, very exciting. Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem at all. Okay, so what is your business all about, and what is it exactly that you do?
I help individuals, I help teams, I help businesses overcome kind of the obstacles that are stopping them from, performing at their best, whether that's in their life, whether that's in the sporting arena or whether that's in their business, because 9 times out of 10, Darren, it's the individual that's getting in their own way. So for me, it's helping people to overcome, their internal obstacles and external obstacles, again, mate, just so they can go on and reach the fulfilling heights that I truly believe that everybody in this world is entitled to do.
I think that's a really good mantra to have. I mean, obviously, I guess you've got to have that mantra in your line of work.
100%, Darren. If I didn't sit with a client here, mate, and didn't believe that they can change, I'm going through the process myself, Darren, with my business. The most important thing anybody can have is belief in themselves and what they're going to do. Because the minute you stop believing in yourself is the minute you'll stop opening doors.
Your clients then, you said you work with businesses and you also work with individuals. So could you put a label on who your client is, or is it pretty much anybody that needs some guidance in that kind of field?
For me, because it's person-centered, people who have reached out to me in all walks, whether they're struggling in elements of their life. So, does that make me a life coach? I work with people in business because they're getting stuck around mindset. Does that make me a mindset coach? And this is something that I've found as I've kind of developed myself and developed my business is, I always said the term, you have to find a niche. You have to find a niche. Whereas me, I guess it's because of the feedback I get and people who refer people to me. I've never really had to find my niche because to me, it's all around mindset. It's all around taking somebody from A to B, filling in that journey. And again, a lot of the time that's, self-belief, confidence, anxiety, whatnot. But it's all around helping people change the way they're thinking, to help them feel in a different way, to help them behave in a different way. And because of that, it just means I work with a broad range of people in all walks of life, Darren, adults, children. I think for me, that's what I love about my role, Darren. You coach the person, not the story. The story is irrelevant. We got to get the best out of ourselves, and I feel honoured and privileged, to get the best out of people so they can then perform best in their business or perform best in their sport or in their life. Life's a performance. We're all on a stage. Life is one performance, and my role, and I'm very honoured and privileged to do it, is help people to perform on their own stage to the full capabilities that I believe everybody is capable of achieving.
I'll take you back a little bit. The first time that I saw you, it wasn't that long ago, but the first time I saw you, you were doing a speech to a room full of people and I was in the audience, and I knew straight away that you were the kind of guy that I thought I could get on with, and I thought you just come across as so easygoing and so approachable. And what you were saying to the room that day, you were talking about your story. You were talking about your backstory and how you got into your business. And it involved when you were a youngster and a point in time where you almost had a light bulb moment and you knew that you wanted to go ahead in a future that was going to help people. How did you get started in what you're doing? And what is your kind of basic story of how you got there?
Thank you for that, Darren. Am I still that approachable, down-to-earth guy that you said, or do you realise in real life I'm actually totally...
Well, no, then I met you, John, and it all changed. But no, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Brilliant. And notice the language I use, Darren, when I talk about myself. And this doesn't come from a place of high and mighty, because I'm anything bloody but. I'm just a normal bloke, family, mortgage, stresses, strains, you name it. I always believed that I was put on this earth to help other people. The reason I say that is from a very young age, I was always very empathetic. I was always wanting to help people. I dislike bullies. And I know bullies might have a backstory into why they're doing that, etc., etc. That's another story for another day. But for me, nothing gave me more pleasure than knowing that I've made a difference in somebody's day, and whether that's just picking them up if they've fallen over, or picking up their pencil case, or giving them a good morning. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's simple things that can make a big difference to people. And again, I think that's a mantra I live by. We don't always have to make big changes. Simple things will make the biggest difference. And I always found by doing simple things for people, it made the biggest difference for them. And through that, I've always kind of found it easy to get on with people. I've always found it easy to strike up conversations, purely because I've always been interested in people, Darren. I've always believed in people achieving what they want to achieve, and this was from a young age. And I think the older I got, you then fall into don't get me wrong, I've got two beautiful children, I'm married, Darren, I'm a family in my world. I've actually got a pug sat on my lap as we record this. But you kind of go then through life of, okay, I need a job, bills, mortgage, etc. And actually, I think I've told you, Darren, I had a courier business myself, which again was great, successful business. But for me personally, I think the older the kids got, and I could kind of then get back to my own level of self-awareness rather than having to focus on the kids 24/7. I was then kind of questioning myself in regards to, do I want this job for the rest of my life, or this thing I always believed that came from deep from within of helping people. Like, falling got bigger, and I think again there was a few light bulb moments for me, and one of them was I used to run a lot, half marathons and whatnot, and basically I got to mile 12 of this half marathon race, and my hip was hurting. But then I was thinking, is it my hip hurting, or is it because the race is getting difficult that my brain is now telling me a story that isn't true? Is it my hip? Is it my brain? Is it just because it's getting tough? And this then got me really interested in sports psychology with myself. And it kind of then led from there, Darren, because I was in that kind of crossroads of, what do I want for a profession, long term. I then started studying a bit of psychology. That was great. I qualified in kind of certain areas, which meant, very early in my business, I was working with sports people. I'm not a qualified sports psychologist. Let me just put that out there. But then I went down the route of NLP and life/business performance coaching. And that was 2 years of training, of coaching frameworks, tools and techniques with the NLP to help people overcome beliefs, confidence, all the internal things that can either excel us or hold us back. And then kind of the business was created, Darren. And, it wasn't a case of, right, I need to start a business in 2 years' time. What's the plan? I need to do it. It was like I kind of grew into the business as I was qualifying.
So how long ago was it that you were in the courier industry? I'm just trying to kind of get a picture of, how long the transition was, because it's quite a step, isn't it, from going to running that kind of business into what you're now doing.
Wow, I think I took up the courier business in 2001. It was only a couple of years ago that the business went fully, because I was growing my new business and kind of phasing out the old business, because, hey, I got family, I've got, as I said, Darren, I've got life, I've got bills. It wasn't a case of, okay, here we go now, I'm just going to dump everything and go. And gratefully, Darren, because of COVID 3-4 years ago, as you well know, courier business was the most safe thing ever, because everybody was ordering online. And that was kind of around the time when COVID hit. And that's hard to believe, mate, isn't it? That was four years ago. The coaching business was on its kind of small and steady curve up, because, again, it was quite a new business at the time. Then the lockdown happened, and it was a case of, gosh, what now? I can't see clients face to face. I was on Zoom at the time. It was a case of, right, fully integrate back into the courier business while still just making noises about the coaching business. But then what I found, Darren, is through that period of COVID, again, I was working with clients because they were struggling with their mental health through that period.
That must have been a tough period for a lot of people, mustn't it? Because it was just unprecedented. No, none of us have ever experienced anything like that before. People must have reached out to you quite a lot, did they?
They did, Darren, yeah. And again, because it could be done on Zoom, I was working with people up and down the country, young children, adults, because again, we didn't know what was happening from one day to the next. And again, I didn't kind of come into the coaching as, to support people through their mental health, even though everything we do affects our mental health. But because people knew I had the tools and techniques and I could offer people a safe space to open up and talk about how they felt, I found I was busy through that period supporting people one-on-one, trying to help them process their thoughts in a more optimistic way, helping them set goals and challenges to actually, make sure that they could go through this period in a more positive way. And since COVID, Darren, I do see people struggle with low levels of depression and anxiety and whatnot. Again, I need to know where my boundary is of what I do as a professional compared to those who I need to signpost on because they need more than what I can offer. But yeah, that period was strange still. When you look back on it, you think, what the bloody hell happened?
That was a turning point, wasn't it, for so many people, so many businesses? It was a kind of a turning point in life for a lot of people. There's this different scenario that we're all chucked in at the deep end and we had to just kind of deal with it or get help from people like yourself. So has there been a change in people's approach to mindset and to acceptance of support in mental health and stuff? Because from my point of view, I think the awareness has definitely been raised in more recent times than it was a few years ago. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Darren. I think, again, if we're going to take something good out of that period, I think it was people realised that actually their health and well-being is the most important thing that we all possess. Every morning we wake up, Darren, we should be grateful that we're alive. And again, I don't come from this as of a place of the most positive person in the world. I think that period made us realise that actually, again, it's the simple things that are the most important things, i.e. going to visit your nan, your kids, i.e. looking after myself. Because for a period, Darren, it seemed like all these things we take for granted were taken away.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that you used to do some running. So are you still involved with any of that? Or what do you do if you get the odd bit of downtime? If you've got some time to yourself and you want to just go out and do something you enjoy, have you got any hobbies or anything?
I run, Darren. Running is my therapy. It always has been, Darren. I truly believe, and I know it's not for everyone, there's a correlation between me, my mindset, and me running. Because I'm like a bear with a sore head when I don't run. I've always called it my mobile office. Again, I don't just run when I feel stressed. Running is a habitual thing that I do because I know it's good for me. I don't compete like I used to, but I know the benefits for me personally running. Plus, I love eating cake. I'd be one hell of a bigger guy, and I don't mean hype, Darren, because I don't do much if I didn't run. So, my downtime, 30-minute windows of running. I'll go for a big, nice, long run on the weekend. But other than that, mate, I'm a very, very introverted person where, yes, I can get up and talk and I can do all these things, which is fantastic. However, the core of me is very introverted. There's nothing I love more than just being with my family, being inside, just doing things in my small little network without going out.
I got into fitness really late and then when I did discover it, I kind of threw myself in at the deep end and I went from doing nothing to a marathon within about 4 or 5 months. And
wow.
And it was, like you've said, it's a therapy that you can't really describe to someone who doesn't run. It's the time alone. It's the thinking time. It definitely helped me, and I can understand your reasons for doing it completely.
Yeah, do you still do it now, Darren?
Not as much as I'd like to, just because of time restraints. But then I guess that's a bit of a lame excuse because we all make excuses about not having time, but we should make the time, shouldn't we?
Darren, we all have this. I delivered a workshop on stress to a business last weekend, and I said, hands up here who thinks they haven't got time for their well-being, and everybody put their hand up. I said, well, the truth is we all have the same amount of time. We could all just work and be busy on the cogwheel of life, and then before you know it, that's another week gone. You carry on before we're at the 5th of March already now. Time just flies. Again, it's important to look after our well-being because, again, I'm the most important person in my life and I'm a dad with 2. But if I don't look after myself, how am I then be able to be the best dad or husband, which I think my wife would disagree with. No, there's no kind of selfishness in that.
In relation to being the best that you can for yourself and for your family, what does a mental health coach do apart from going for a long run? Do you go to someone else for coaching, and do you work with other coaches to improve yourselves? How does that work in those kind of circles?
Yeah, you've just hit it on the head, Darren. I seek support when I need support. I speak to a coach to get the best out of me, Darren. We all get blindsided by our own thoughts, and sometimes you need an exterior view on you and your life to actually help you pinpoint things that you might not be visible to. You then decide whether you take it or leave it, but no man has ever done anything alone. It takes a team to build a dream. Look at a boxer. The boxer goes in the ring alone. However, there's a whole team behind that boxer, or to get the best out of that boxer in the ring. That boxer's the one going into the arena. However, he needs a whole team around him, like we all do, Darren. I truly believe that we all need a team around us to not just bring the best out of us, but to make sure that on its most simplest form, Darren, that we are looking after ourselves, maintaining our own well-being.
Are there any people, maybe in your industry or maybe just in general in society, is there anyone that you look up to? Is there any kind of people that you think, yeah, they're a real inspiration to me and I want to sort of strive to be like them, or do you not particularly bothered about that sort of thing?
My dad was always my greatest inspiration, and unfortunately my dad passed away in 2020, and to this day it still leaves a gaping hole in me, not only because he's my dad. My dad still is my hero just purely because he knew how to be around certain situations. If he could see I was down, he knew what mode he'd go into to help lift me up. If he could see I was happy and jokey, he would get on that level with me. It was like he had such great intelligence to actually know what I needed and what other people needed.
A great reader of your character.
Absolutely amazing. I feel blessed to have somebody firsthand who taught me my ways of the world. And again, he wasn't like a mental Shaolin monk who would spit out motivational quotes to me, but just by who he was as a person, his ethic with life, his ethic with working. He never wanted for anything. He never wanted cars. He never wanted the biggest, brightest thing. He was the most simplest man, Darren, yet he was the most content person I ever knew. And I feel if I could live up to that expectation, I don't want for things. It's nice to have nice things, don't get me wrong. But for me, that comes from a place from within. I think once you find that place within, then you've won. We talk about the stage of life. I feel like I've won on my stage of life. When I go through life, do you know what? I feel content with everything I've got. And I think I'm getting there.
Your idea of success, I'm getting the vibe that it's that well-being and that inner peace. Is that more of your kind of what you're striving to get to?
100%, Darren. Yeah, 100%. For me, it's feeling. For me, it's not a £300,000 Bentley car on my drive. Maybe it's because I can't afford a £300,000 Bentley on my drive, Darren. If I had one, maybe I would. Yeah. This conversation would be different. But for me, it's always been coming home, feeling good in myself, seeing that my family are happy and fed. And again, I think this goes back to me being young and going back to how I always felt I was here to give. I think I'm very intrinsically motivated. It's not about the car. It's not about the house.
And like you said earlier, which is one thing I've kind of come to realize more recently, the little actions that you do that influence other people are such a big thing, aren't they? Just acknowledging people, smiling at people, generally being outward and appreciative of those around you. That rubs off, doesn't it? And it just gives a little bit of what you're trying to spread to the wider audience.
Definitely, like I say, I was never good with my hands, the most untechnical person when it comes to technology. I've always been good at working with people and helping people and understanding people. I feel uncomfortable talking about myself, Darren. Again, I think it's the introvert extrovert. I could listen to people talk all day long.
I think that's imposter syndrome. I think we all struggle with that sometimes, don't we? Sometimes you almost don't want to admit of what, your achievements are, and that you're kind of in this place of whatever you deem success to be, and you don't want to shout about it. But I think it's important that you do, to be honest with you, because that goes back to the inner confidence thing again, doesn't it?
Nobody's got the blueprint to any of this, Darren. Nobody's got the print to life. Nobody's got the blueprint to business. If you can go to bed every night and say, do you know what, I gave 100% today, things aren't always going to go right. That's part of life. Things will go right sometimes. We need to go in with that mindset that, do you know what, if I can put my hand on my heart and every day and say, I've given 100% to everything I've done, that's a successful life.
Let's go back to your industry a little bit. And I want to talk about people's perception of mental health and well-being. Have you ever come across any common misconceptions? Only a few years ago, if someone was struggling with mental health, you'd hear all these stupid bits of advice, like, oh, just try and smile, or just do this, or just... Are there any kind of common misconceptions that people think would fix someone who needs some help from someone like yourself?
I mean, again, I get the pleasure to educate people delivering mental health training courses. And to be honest, Darren, I educate myself every time I deliver these courses, because everybody who I deliver it to have their own experience of mental health. It's very, very personal experience. And I think the misconceptions, there's still a heck of a lot of them, because mental health is something we are just talking about yet. Mental health is something we have all had since, the brain has been created. There's still a taboo, there's still a stigma around it. Actually, I'm delivering a course next week and I needed to update my slides. This is the thing I have to do it, is to look at the suicide statistics. I need to get them as close as I can, because obviously they change all the time. And just kind of looking at them statistics, Darren, and I still think, wow, it's absolutely heartbreaking just to see them statistics. I think people need to understand, it's not a quick fix for some people. It's not just a case of smile, man up, why don't you just cheer up? There are little things we can do, Darren, like we said about the running. There are things we can all do to help our own mental health and well-being. However, there's still going to be things that are put in the mixing pot that are going to stretch people's mental health.
Do you ever find yourself, if you're out with a group at an event or a room full of people, maybe you're not even working at that particular time, but can you spot signs in people in general, in the way they act and their mannerisms? Do people generally manage to keep a good mask on, things like that?
We're all good at hiding our true feelings, aren't we? I think there's obvious signs sometimes that somebody might be struggling with things, but then flip side of that is some people who are struggling, Darren, you wouldn't even know. People wear their heart on their sleeve, so you can see by how they're carrying themselves that something might be up. Because somebody's looking down doesn't necessarily mean they're in the deep darkest of a crisis. Just check in with people. If you think somebody is behaving in a way that you're not used to, just check in with them.
If you're around somebody and you may be a little bit concerned, or they've changed the way they act, or they're looking, like they need a little bit of help, what would be the one or two simple things that anyone could be the most helpful in sort of helping their friend or colleague or relative?
See if it's circumstantial or not. Because if somebody's going through a real tough time professionally or at home, it could be something you could ask, what's going on in your life right now? Is there anything you feel that is actually kind of driving this, how you're feeling? Because it's like, Darren, life isn't always bloody rosy. And I always think the quickest way to help somebody is by get to the cause of what is causing that problem. Find out if they've spoken to anybody before about it. Have they thought about speaking to their GP or a professional about it? Because again, Darren, a lot of people, and it's great we talk about well-being and everything, because it's now on the radar. Everybody is more in tune with their own mental health, well-being, their emotions, etc. But a lot of people don't know what kind of support they need.
The one thing that kind of struck me in looking more into this is you think you know the answer to what's going on, but you then have to ask what's the reason for that thought, or what's the reason, and you have to ask why about 3 or 4 or 5 times, because you have to go deeper and deeper and deeper to get to the root cause, don't you?
Yeah. I always use the analogy, like when your grandma or your auntie would have like a big ball of elastic bands. They would kind of just put elastic band on elastic band till it was like a big massive ball of elastic bands. Now, every one of those elastic bands is something that could be going on. And it's not until you start peeling off the elastic band in their individual and kind of compartmentalizing these things. And actually, then you take these things off, you can get more to the root cause. Because, like you said, 9 times out of 10, the thing that you actually think is the thing is the thing.
No, that's it.
And
Yeah.
where the skill of a coach or someone will come in and actually, come into the root cause. And then what we can do when we find the root cause is then put the elastic bands on. But when you put the elastic bands on, you realize that they fit into place a little bit different. Shift one part of your brain or your thinking and notice then how it affects other parts of your life or your brain.
Is there a kind of an average number of sessions that you might spend with a client, or is it just dependent on where they are and how they're feeling and what they need?
Exactly that. For me, I got to think of the ethics and, morally. I have clients who I see every other week. I have clients who I see once a month. See clients once every 2 months or when they feel they want to come back. But it's always driven by the client because that, again, is the most ethical way of doing it. And yeah, I still stand by that. That's why I live in a tin shack and I've not got the Bentley though, because I'm ethical.
If you want to add anything to that, then be my guest. My next question was going to be, what would you say are your qualities that make you stand out? But I think the ethical piece that kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Again, for me, Darren, is I know I'm not perfect, but I'm on a journey myself. I give 100% to any client. With that client, I'm present with that client. I'm listening to everything they're saying. I'm looking for body language. I'm picking up on little subtle signs that they might not be noticing because they might be clues. They might not be clues. And I think it's that for me,
So if anyone was listening and they're thinking of getting into your industry on whatever level, whether it's mindset, whether it's motivational, whether it's, any form of coaching in general, where would you advise someone to start if they were just literally thinking about it in the early stages?
Okay. I say to people, I tell them right from the start, do you know what coaching is? You know what the difference between coaching is and therapy is, and even mentoring. As a coach, we'll kind of go through that continuum, but I understand that my professionalism is around coaching. I have a level 2 in counselling, but I am not a qualified counsellor. Make sure you know what coaching is and make sure you know what coaching isn't. And then when people are on a clear path and, if coaching is what they're looking for, then I'll then guide them. And again, I do some work for the college, the UK CPD, the United Kingdom College of Personal Development. So that's where I trained. I'm actually a trainer for the college now. And I would say to them, look for an accredited college or an accredited course where it's accredited to the main bodies of coaching, the Association for Coaching, but make sure it is an accredited course because, again, same with NLP, back in the 80s, NLP was known as a pseudoscience because you could go train NLP on a weekend and be put out in the world and work with clients, whereas, my training has taken 2 years. I still do CPD. Like I say, I'm still on this learning journey myself. And I would say that to people of getting into the industry because it's important for coaches to go to practice groups to keep our skills sharp.
Like you mentioned earlier, especially in more recent years, there is a lot of coaches that seem to have popped up over the last few years, and some of them have taken the route that you have, and they've got the accreditations, but there's some of them kind of just call themselves coaches. So you've just got to go through that minefield to get the right ones, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. And again, I would say this because I've done this the ethical way. Look for a coach who is accredited. Ask them what accreditations they have. Because again, when we're talking about working with people mentally, emotionally, to make massive changes in their life, Darren, you somebody who has been observed time and time again doing what is right, not just with tools and techniques, but ethically, morally, do your groundwork on somebody.
You're quite involved with networking in one or two different forms. So tell me a bit more about that. What level are you involved in with some of your networking groups?
So I'm currently the chair at Business Wise, which is a fantastic group. Different tradespeople. We're all there to support each other, not just with referrals, but however we can, be that personally and professionally. Also run Men in Business, which is once a month on an online platform. I think things are changing there with the platform, so I can't give much more information than that. I miss Cotswold Network as well, Darren. That's where you and I first first met,
Yeah,
wasn't it? How
yeah,
how
absolutely.
could I forget? So yeah, that's once a month over Cirencester. Again, because of evening clients at the minute, I think I've missed the last couple. But again, it's a different group of people, and for me, networking is integral to any business. But again, I think if you just go into these network groups thinking, right, I'm going to come in and try and fleece the room for all the business, it's the wrong approach. It's about building these long-term relationships like you and I are doing now, obviously like I do with Dash and whatnot. And I think that's where the power is, because you need to trust the people that actually you're going to refer to.
Before we round things up, is there anything that you'd like, anything you want to promote, anything you want to talk about, any sort of invitations to any of your groups?
Actually excited about a workshop that I wrote called Stress Doesn't Have to Feel Stressful, and I delivered it to an accountant's AAT last Saturday. That's like a morning workshop, and I think I'm trying to kind of push that out just purely because of the feedback I've taken from it. And I think I'm trying to kind of maybe push that out a little bit to businesses who would benefit from a half-day course on, workshop where it's fun and it's interactive, just helping people again help with stress management. And again, Darren, we talk about business and stuff. Stress is a massive thing within business.
So if there might be any groups or any business leaders or anything that are looking to help their teams, lift them up, that's exactly the sort of thing that you're into then, isn't it?
Exactly, mate. And like I say, for me, the businesses I work with, personal one-to-one coaching and team coaching, and any business that feel they would benefit from that, all in a bid to kind of help themselves as individuals or their teams to not only support their own well-being, but actually to perform, at the best of their ability. So that's where the passion lies.
Just before we go then, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, John, either on a personal or on a business level, what's the simplest way anyone can reach out to you?
My website is jrmindsetperformance.co.uk. I'm on all the platforms. So John Lewis on LinkedIn, John Lewis and JR Mindset Performance on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. And again, I can be seen at these varied networking events that we've discussed. And I'd love to grab a coffee with somebody sometime if they feel they would benefit from anything we've spoken about today or anything they know that I do professionally.
Well, I might take you up on that coffee anyway, John, even if I don't need to speak to you about anything professional.
Darren, it's your time to buy it, mate. I did last time.
I know.
I'm still waiting, Darren.
I'll hold you to that. Look, John, thank you so much for being a guest today. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you for joining me. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, mate. And it's been a pleasure. And it's obviously great seeing you doing these podcasts and stuff, mate. Again, what you do for the business world and everything you're bringing to awareness in business and the realities of it, mate. It's not all glory, is it?
Thanks a lot, John. I'll speak to you soon, mate.